world's #1 CEO coach. Our first guest is an expert on executive leadership, business strategy, and innovation, who has spent over 25 years leading teams and building companies from the ground up. He delivers actionable, valuable, and practical advice for leaders at all levels of an organization. He is a New York Times bestselling author and leadership coach for the world's fastest growing, most innovative companies, and he's here with us today. It's a great pleasure. Put your hands together for the world's #1 CEO coach, Mark Thompson.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. Let's take another moment with that level of enthusiasm to thank all the folks at Q&A for bringing us together again. It's been such a delight to meet so many of you here and to get to know you better at this conference. Do they do a great job or what? Let's give them a big round of applause. And I'm thinking about tech. I'm a Silicon Valley guy, and I have to travel a lot. And I know that I have this thing for getting on airplanes that we're actually doing again now after the pandemic. And it was interesting because, I had the opportunity to get on a plane in the US, and it was a pretty frothy day in terms of the weather and all the rest. And I was feeling a little bit nervous as I was getting in my seat. They were still going to make the flight anyway. And the flight attendant stood up and gave the safety talk. And he said, "Okay, everybody, now you know how to do your seat belts. But if there is going to be a severe amount of turbulence that might happen a little later today, there could be these little yellow masks that drop out of the ceiling. Those are not pandemic masks, those are oxygen masks. Grab the mask, put it on your face first, and then put it on your child. And if you have more than one child, you might just want to stop to consider which one really has the most potential." I hope it doesn't ever come to that for any of us here. Everyone here is at the top of their potential to have impact. HR has never been more strategic. As a chief executive myself, as an entrepreneur in the past, I've never seen a time in history where CEOs were not more dependent on the technologies and the HR staff coming together at a time where we need you to curate, where we need your help and heart and soul as we automate, we create augmented reality, as we create augmented assistance and AI and ChatGPT. All of this stuff that's flowing around now needs your curation. You're the host. You're the love and honor and soul that comes from touching an organization from the inside out. Today we're talking a lot about happiness and technology. I hope they go together. I know they certainly do for many of us, only when HR is involved. And we're talking about collaboration. Now, for me, I'm so thrilled to be able to collaborate with the #1 collaboration expert in the world. And she happens to be a person who just recently finished a study which is groundbreaking on understanding in a deeper way why it's so damn hard to collaborate and how to bring people together for them to really bring their highest purpose. I'd like to bring to the stage right now a person who's a New York Times bestselling author. She worked on her incredible research at University of Pennsylvania and Harvard. She's had 25 years in corporate human resources experience. Come on up here, Benita Thompson. Dr. Benita, give her a big round of applause. How is it? How is it that we can talk about collaboration and then not collaborate?
We
We're
thought
going to
that
do this together today.
we would do it together because we're talking about collaboration. So I'm thrilled to be here today. Thank you so much, Mark, for sharing the stage with me.
Well, today, you and I worked on a New York Times bestselling book, didn't we? We actually collaborated. Two people working in two different fields, from HR to the chief executive's office.
And we were looking at who people admire and why they admire them. A lot of research has been done on many of the human emotions, but very little had been done on admiration. And so that's what we studied.
And what we'd like to do is have you all stand up here in a moment. What I want you to do is stop and think for a moment. When we are talking about leading leaders and training the next generation of leaders and helping our current leaders get better at what they do, how could we not stop to think about who it is that we admire who are leaders? Now, I want you to stop to think about a person who knows you and you know them, someone that you admire, someone who had touched your heart and soul. Are you starting to get a picture in your mind of someone who may have had that influence on you? Okay, I want you to stand up real quick and tell the person next to you who it is that you admired, and most importantly, why. Come on, stand up. Let's do this. Energy. Okay.
Okay, everybody, switch to the next person. Who do the next person admire and why?
Okay, have you both been heard?
If we could come back.
Okay, we're going to interrupt you now and have you sit.
Does anyone here want to?
Isn't it amazing? This very simple question that's hidden in plain sight. Such a wonderfully simple question. Can you imagine asking someone who they admire? You might have known them for years, and you'll hear something about what it is that person did to touch your life. And for a new relationship, like many of us in this room, it's nice to get intimate pretty quickly as to what it is that there's in that heart and soul that you admire. And it's not even creepy. You could do it at the beginning of any conversation or even over coffee in the morning, right? Who do you admire? Great for a continuing conversation. So now we'd like to ask you, Benita, out there, you have somebody who would like to share with us.
I have Ahmad here, and he's going to share with us who he admires and why.
Yeah, actually, we are Saudis. We feel very proud of having MBS as a leader in Saudi Arabia. So I believe it touches all of us. The changes that we are seeing in Saudi Arabia these days and like 5 years ago, and the changes that we are seeing, it's happening. You know, he just walked the talk, and make us, all of us, proud of that. For me, actually, and for the most of Saudis, or I can say for all Saudis, he's, you know, an influential leader, and this is what I'd like to share with you here today.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much for that.
It takes a lot of courage to make change as a leader. So that's wonderful. Thank you, Ahmad.
So I was going to ask you, what's your name and where are you from? And if you could tell us who it is that you admire and why.
Okay, so my name is Jamila Korak, and I am, from Lebanon, but I live in Dubai. So the person I admire made a big impact on my life because he was one of my GM. I changed many of GMs throughout my career, but he was the only one who believed in my potential, and he opened doors for me, and I was not sure in that time. And he really was very empathetic. He was very compassionate, and I remember I used to go to him to the office to ask him something, and he's very busy. But guess what? In a few minutes, he's in my office. And he was really, really knowing every single person, very compassionate with people, and very down to earth. So, yeah, this is the one.
That resonates. Give her a big round of applause. That resonates for me so much, too. I mean, how many of us here finally had that one person who heard us, who saw us, who decided to take a bet on us? I see some nods going around in the room. Anyone else want to share about it? That sense of admiration. Are you over here, Benita? Okay, right. Please, if you could stand up, just because we love how you're witnessing this.
I'm under the weather. My name is Bhumika. I'm from India, staying in Dubai from quite long. It's home now. I admire each and every speaker over here who will come today, who has come so far here, for sharing their knowledge, their experiences with all of us. I have learned a lot over the years. So thank you for that.
Oh, that's beautiful to hear. Thank you. Thank you. Did you have someone over here, Bonita? I saw other nods. Anyone else want to share? Okay, all the way in the back. I'm going to come all the way back here. And we'd love to hear why this person had such an impact on you. Wave again so I can find you. Here you go. Who did you admire and why?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ramesh Vadan. I'm from India. I'm in Dubai for the last 9 years. And I would like to inform, I admire Mr. Rahul Verma. He's my manager. Yes. And the reason is he ensured that initially we were having the HR and admin were together. So eventually we found that no, we were wasting time on the transactional process regarding the admin and other things. So he put up, he was firm and he was ensuring that we need to concentrate on HR activities more than the administrative tasks. And that is one thing. And at the same time, he also ensures that we need to maintain the work-life balance. So he was keen and he always draw lines so to ensure that people go on time. So this is one of the important quality which I admire on him. So that's about him. His name is Captain Rahul Verma. He's from the Indian Army. He's an ex-army person. So that was which I wanted to share with you. Thanks very much.
Give him a round of applause. Isn't it interesting that people who have both the heart and the head, who have the evidence and could have an impact with the data and then convert it into what lights us up in our hearts and minds? Bonita, who did you admire?
Well, I think it's because I'm at the HR Tech Conference here today that I'm thinking of my first boss, Nora Lynch. She hired me to be an intern to crunch all the numbers. I was studying industrial psychology and statistics at the time, and so I would come into the unit to run turnover numbers and all the statistics. Now, this was back in the 70s. Nora was the CHRO for a medical devices company, and she had this extraordinary ability. But I remember that she would come into my office at 3 o'clock every day, and she would use the palm of her hand, and she would hit my desk, and she would say, "Pop time!" And that meant that I was to put all my work away, and we were going to journey across the factory floor to the Coca-Cola machine that was on the other side of the floor, and we would get a Coke together. But the journey took a very, very long time because Nora would put her arm around me and she'd say, "Well, first, we're going to go see Mary." Now, Mary, she just lost her father 2 days ago, and she's already back at work. So we're going to check in on Mary, and we're going to find out how she's doing. And if she needs a little more time, then we're going to go talk to Amir, because Amir has 3 sons that are in college. He will be willing to take any hours that she needs off. And then we're going to go to the unit. We had a unit on the assembly line that was very loud, and everybody who worked in that unit was deaf. So it didn't bother them that it was very loud. And so we would go have birthday cake with them of all the birthdays that were being celebrated. And I remember one day I went to, Nora took me to the assembly line. And there was a woman there named Clara Jobs, and she had a son named Steve, who also liked assembling things. And I remember she was telling me that Steve Jobs had taken over the garage and was assembling things. And I asked her how she felt about that. And she said, "Well, honey, I was so glad when he took over the garage because I finally got my kitchen table back."
Very early days at Apple.
Very early days at Apple. But you could see that the journey took a very long time to the Coke machine. But what that journey taught me, and what Nora taught me, and what I admired about her, was that I wasn't just crunching numbers. That they weren't numbers, they were people real people with real lives in real families and real communities that depended upon them. And that is something that I've carried with me today in every one of my studies. So I truly appreciate it, Nora. How about you, Mark? Who did you admire?
Well, when I think about who I admire, the list is endless, because when you're an executive coach and you have the privilege of people becoming vulnerable to take advice. I don't know, growing up, I didn't have a lot of room for taking advice. How about you? This idea that we were able to hear a message, absorb that, and then pay it forward. I focus on the C-suite and CEOs. These are people who are already confidently in front of the audience, in front of their people, in front of their communities. These are the people who need to role model that leadership first. It starts with you, the leader, and flows throughout the entire organization. And so this vision of being able to help the top of an organization role model the behaviors of being vulnerable, role model the behaviors of getting better in all the areas where we need to become a better leader, and enabling, most important, empowering the next -2, -3 at all levels in an organization. And so this morning, when I was asked this question about admiration, I have to admire people who are working to bring coaches together who can have a huge impact on you. So I wanted to take a moment to admire a few people who are in the audience here, who are leading now the preeminent organization that's enabling and empowering coaches with subject matter expertise from happiness to startups. Start great companies. I'd like to thank you, Scott, and thank you, Jacqueline. Jacqueline just became president today. Scott is founder and CEO. This is an organization that really helps all of us. I'm in your debt because you really help me reach and touch people across industries who all have the same journey. We're all humans. We're all trying to have impact on the world. We're all just a little bit afraid. And there's a little bit of that syndrome of thinking that maybe I just need to show bravery as opposed to vulnerability. And so having that ability to have subject matter experts who care enough to want to change and grow themselves is what we do for a living. And thank you so much, Scott and Jacqueline, for making that possible. I wanted to take this then to another level. So if we're talking about admiration and we're talking about collaboration, you'd think that that would go pretty well over with people when we talk to people around the world about that. But you know what? Not so much, and not all the time. I mean, we were just in Shanghai, and things seem to be going so well. We were talking about the heart and the soul and bringing that together, because we have credibility in business. We know how to deliver on the KPIs. People who know how to deliver the evidence and the KPIs are the first people who need to be talking about the heart and soul of an organization, and the first to be talking about coaching. So,
And
Benita.
yet I got interrupted.
Yes.
They stopped me. and
Time
they
out.
said, no, collaboration won't work here in China. They said, we have boss man culture.
Anyone heard of boss man culture? Anyone
boss man
had a
culture.
boss man?
Anybody worked for boss man?
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, okay. The camera's on us, not on you. We won't tell.
So
How you feeling about that?
I asked them a question about when was a time that they came, and I'm going to ask you as well, when was a time that they came to work fully engaged, fully alive, feeling like they had impact? And then I would love to know, what was your boss doing? What was your boss doing?
I heard in the front row, he said, what was my boss doing? He was on leave. No matter, that had no impact on how energized I am feeling. We'd like to come out and ask you just that question. What was your boss doing in that one moment that you felt the most empowered and engaged? Because we're talking about leadership development. We're talking about developing the next generation of people. Have we thought about that moment? Anyone? Yes. And what's your name and where are you coming from today?
Sure. My name is Hitashi, and I live in Dubai. I'm a global citizen. I have been born and brought up in India, worked in US, then moved to UAE. So I think my boss was empowering me, trusting me, giving me the confidence that he has my back. So that's when I felt alive, engaged, giving my best.
Fantastic. Wouldn't we all just be so blessed to have that moment?
And to have the trust that that the whole department has, huge element in collaboration. Would you like to share what your boss was doing?
Thank you. I'm Jacqueline. I'm happy to be here from the U.S. I had a supervisor who gave me the opportunity to cast a bigger vision for myself, to dream a little bit bigger, who saw the greatness in me and gave me opportunities to take more responsibility. But the beautiful thing was that he always reminded me, any success that you have, you can take full credit. But any failure you have, that'll be on me. That's my fault. And so he gave me this great safety to try new things and to reach a little bit higher.
That's a wonderful thing that
Great
a leader can
round of
do.
applause.
To give people a sense of safety, a sense of.
Okay, so one of the moments that I was very excited, and I can say it's a success and also take responsibility. We got a customized Harvard program to our senior leadership. Good brand, big name. I was over the moon. I got the approval, the budget. But when I start to get the feedback from my manager, from different seniors that, yes, but I don't think this is suitable for me. I don't think this I fit. We know because we are big groups. So each one of them, they start to say that this is not up to their level. So my excitement was over the moon, and my manager that time say, I know you are very excited, we get the approval, but you need to understand, that you will be facing a lot of challenge, especially when you deal with the different culture, different type of people. And I took the responsibility, and I was pushing hard to it. There was up and down, definitely, and it was a learning. But yes, I learned that the energy sometimes, you are high in the mood, but put the expectation as well, because reality is different.
The reality is different, and he let you follow through with your power.
Yeah, and it was successful. So,
Give her
yes.
a round of applause. She made it work. Collaboration is so hard. And it didn't matter how great the brand was or how great the speaker was or the trainer was. For some reason, when I ask them about change, they say, I love change. I love innovation. You go first. Right? It's about the other person changing first. Yeah. What was your boss doing, and where are you from?
Actually, well, I'm from Saudi Arabia, but I've been in the UAE for the past 20 years. You mentioned innovation. That was something that I wanted to share. What my boss at the time was doing was allowing me to innovate. And I knew that she had her own way of creating programs, putting things together. She had her opinions, but she didn't impose them. She gave me that room for creativity and coming up with my own solutions, and gently gave her advice, whether or not I took it, but that was really empowering.
Fantastic. Give her a round of applause. Another great boss. So this issue of being able to be in a position where we think about what it was that our boss was doing to light us up, to ignite us, and imagining, is that in our leadership development programs?
Are those the things we're training our leaders to do?
Is it in our coaching programs right now? The things that are in your heart and soul. This is the big question.
Are we training them to listen and to build trust and to set achievable goals, but a little bit of a stretch of a goal?
Are we helping them really feel safe when the organization isn't feeling very happy about being vulnerable yet? It used to be in many parts of the world that, and it's still true in some departments, in some organizations right now, to make yourself vulnerable to change is a very big deal. So we decided that we'd do studies. We just didn't know that each of us were doing studies at the same time. So this is a tale of two dueling studies, which we're going to give you just very quickly.
We did them separately. We didn't compare notes.
And my study was here in the UAE. I'm a golden visa holder here in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and my client, His Excellency, had told me how he came to our last Q&A event in October, and he had told me, hey, I'm head and chairman of economic development. I have power over nothing, because how do you empower an economy? The only way to do that is with you, and with you, and with you, and with you, and all the people in the room. Tourism, energy, municipal, education, all the different fields. So we did a survey, and so what are the leadership traits that we should be looking for? And it's fascinating because many of the things that I heard here in the room were exactly what the chairman all around the table said were important in leadership traits that they'd like to possess and what they'd like to pay forward for their organization. Meanwhile, at the same time,
I was doing a study at the University of Pennsylvania with 33 CEOs and C-suite professionals at multinational corporations, and I was interviewing them for what were the skills that they needed to create a collaborative environment. And I had the backing of the University of Pennsylvania, but my chair was at Harvard, which in and of itself was a great collaboration.
You know, even universities don't get along naturally, do they?
Very true.
In this case,
and I did 30 years in human resources, so I had a lot of questions about how does the leader engender that collaborative environment? We don't learn it in school. If you collaborate in school, if you ask your friend to help you on your paper, or if you look over on his paper on a test, you're not going to be rewarded for that. That's cheating, right?
It's ironic.
We don't learn to collaborate in school. Then we get out into our professional life, and at the very beginning of our professional career, we're rewarded for what? Our expertise, our excellence. And if we're really excellent, we get promoted into a leadership position. And now, all of a sudden, instead of being the expert, we're expected to bring out the best in others, help them work with other people, work with our peers to share resources. All of those things are very different skills from the skills that we promote people into. So my research question was, how do leaders learn those skills? How do they learn to listen? How do they learn to set goals? And so that's what we're going to share with you.
So we're going to go, this is going to be the 7 principles in about 7 minutes, and we'd be happy to talk in greater depth because collaboration is very, very deep, very complex, very driven by change, and yet the notion and heart and spirit that we heard in this room was very much at the heart of what we heard from both our studies. And the first comes down.
The most common thing that my leaders told me was, to be collaborative, you have to set goals. Now that was really interesting because I thought collaboration was about getting along and being nice, and they said, no, it's about achieving your goal. It's about being effective at achieving your goals.
And reframing that goal so that it's clear that we have a mutually beneficial outcome. We set these goals that are abstractions. Now we're talking about, for this group, this collaborative team, this high-performance team, what is our mutually beneficial goal? Because it's going to be hard. We're going to have vicious arguments over the issue. How are we going to come together around it?
And they actually used the goal to find the intrinsic motivation in each individual. They used the goal to motivate them. So it's really important that leaders are good at setting goals.
I put up a quick picture of one set of clients for me is the World Bank. You've got 80 different sovereign nations who are on the board of directors. Talk about a fistfight over how to decide how to change the earth, how to have impact on the planet across many, many fields. And they realized they had to decide in every initiative that they took, how can we have a mutually beneficial outcome that's going to transcend all the other outcomes? And I put Venus Williams up here because I have a privilege of working with so many individuals and organizations at the C level, and some of them are elite athletes. And Venus was the first to say, hey, look, I've got 2 very successful businesses, and they only became successful when I stopped practicing what was my biggest habit as a gold medalist, which was individual contribution. Now it was about activating the team, finding the mutually beneficial outcome. The goal used to be winning for me. And we noticed that with a lot of our, bossy bosses. So this is the contrast.
The second thing they told me is you have to set decision-making rights. And by that I mean we have to decide who's going to decide what and when. And that is to try to push it down into the organization closest to the customer, because you don't want the leader making all of the decisions.
That's the
because that
bottleneck.
leader will become overwhelmed very quickly.
Right.
So setting the decision-making rights.
Get that decision-making right closest to the customer and to the operations. I have His Excellency here from the KSA. He just inherited the job of minerals. And what he realized is that there was nobody on the team who wanted to take any risk of making decisions. They didn't want to be criticized. They didn't want to be in a position where others would question them. They didn't want to have any argument. I mean, most of us tend to be conflict averse. Some of us are too attracted to conflict. Either way, it'd be better for the boss man to make the decision. He said, no, I want to make those decisions distributed. I want to make sure that you and you and you know exactly what's in your sandbox, where your swim lane is, to distribute those decision-making rights. That's the second principle. Third principle
is role setting. So now we have to tie not just the goal, but the role that the person is going to play in that. It's really important that not just the leader knows the roles or the individuals know their role, but that everybody on the team knows what the role of everybody else on the team is. We've had the privilege of knowing Alan Mulally, who is president of CEO of Boeing and was the turnaround CEO of Ford Motor Company. And he talks about a very complex way of using these three things to steer the collaboration, to get everybody in a room talking together about what are we going to be achieving, when are we going to be achieving it, and who's going to be assigned to that, and determining what decisions need to be made.
Another place this kind of runs off the road is in succession planning. I get invited in very frequently to think about how can we set up success for the next level of the C-suite and for the CEO and the chairman. And I don't know about you, but when people like a Venus work their whole lives to be a gold medalist, it's very much like a CEO working her whole life or his whole life to identify with being the leader. So this idea, this dimension of building a bench ends up being a wonderful abstraction, a lovely intellectual idea about empowering the team, until it kind of comes down to Larry Page, larger than life at Google, telling me I'll be no one when I move on and pick the next guy. So how do we make the exit strategy as important as the entrance strategy? And this type of work ends up meaning that you have to be very clear about, in this next role that Larry was going to be taking on, what is my goal? What role will I play? And what decision-making rights will I be passing to the next generation?
We heard in our audience about building trust and about listening to each other. And a lot of trust gets built through honesty. In fact, in 40% of the cases where somebody made a comment about building trust, in that same comment they put something about honesty, which is a tremendously high rate for a qualitative study. So we build trust in many ways, but the most common way that people told me is, I'll work for somebody that I don't like, but I will not work for somebody I don't trust.
What?
So I will work for somebody I don't like, but I will not work for someone I don't trust. So the first thing our leaders need to do is build trust in the organization. Trust that comes through safety. Trust that comes through the openness to have an active conversation about what the issues are, where the conflict is not about me calling you names, it's about how are we going to achieve our goal. So it's issue-based conflict, not relationship-based conflict, that builds trust in an organization.
Because face it, when we're talking about technology and innovation, we both grew up in Silicon Valley. It's all arguments all the time. We didn't know how to get to the moon. She'll talk more about that in a moment. But we did know that we had to get there. And there was 100 different ways to imagine a very ambiguous and very complex exercise. So one of the things that this trust frames, we realized, was that's what helps you be resilient when you're getting into a big argument. We're going to get back to what we're trying to do here. I realize we're arguing with each other. Let's not make it personal. We still have to get this done. It's not solving the problem.
And in my study, a willingness to learn, curiosity upon the part of everyone. If somebody comes with a completely different statement, rather than immediately defending my statement, I'm curious. Why are you saying that? What is it that you see in that approach? And that takes a tremendous amount of humility, which is really interesting because if you look at the leadership literature, humility is not something that we reward. We don't want somebody who's unsure or self-deprecating. We want somebody who's confident and sure and decisive. But the humility is specifically related, my leaders told me, to a willingness to learn from everyone about how we're going to achieve our goal. How about in your study?
Well, one of my most famous clients is Richard Branson. He has 400 companies in the Virgin Group. Imagine this, 400 HR leaders, 400 CEOs. How do we transfer this need to be clear about to improve and being humble for the process of being coached. This topic of being coachable is actually the subject of a book that Jacqueline and Scott are writing for the 100 Coaches Agency. This idea that we can take the most iconic principles and not just identify with them personally. This is something that Benita and I saw many times. If you identify too much with your idea, then you have to defend it the whole way. It needs to be that we're working towards a common outcome. It's not Mark's idea. It's one idea to get us towards the solution. Now, I know we only have 5 minutes left here, so Benita, I'm gonna put up here, I'm gonna move to the overall construct, and you can take us home.
Sure. So diversity of thought and understanding other people's motives. I had a wonderful conversation with Jamila, who shared with me that she had used the tool at University of Pennsylvania for assessing what motivates people, what are their values on her family. I thought that was very brave. And she shared with, and I asked her, did you have a better relationship with your family? And she said, well, it changed my behavior because I understood better what really motivated them. Mm-hmm. And certainly creating a diversity of thought. Now, when I was growing up, I grew up in the 60s in Silicon Valley. So there was one thing on everyone's mind in the whole valley, and that was to put a man on the moon. And that was an incredible environment to grow up in. My father was a fuel specialist for the moon launch. My brother was a chemist for NASA. The neighbors were origami specialists who learned how to fold the lunar module onto the rocket. We had a specialist in our neighborhood who was a bird specialist, kept the birds out of the rocket. So there was all these incredible areas of expertise, and every single expert had to do their job to the highest quality for the entire project to win.
And may I add that these people, when not knowing how to get to the moon, we recruited people from 80 countries.
There were many languages spoken.
We were minorities in our school.
We might not understand each other, but we knew what our goal was. And that was an incredible environment to grow up in, because I realized this collaborative environment not only allows us to be more productive, it not only allows us to come up with new ideas that are innovative to solve our problems, it also allows us to achieve what nobody thinks is possible. And that's why I think collaboration is just so very powerful.
We would be so honored to have the privilege of working with you to develop a plan to enhance and strengthen collaboration throughout the organizations. We've done it in places where the collaboration has always made the impossible possible.
And both Mark and I have seen example after example here in the Middle East of people being willing to learn, building trust, listening to one another. Incredible examples of collaboration that you are all doing right here, right now. And you're doing the impossible. You're building cities on sand, and you're doing what I would consider to be moon launches right here in the Middle East.
Right. It's amazing work that you're doing. Thank you so much, and we'd be happy to take questions. And we'll also be around later and we'll, at the receptions and so forth. But if there's any way we could answer a question or two right now, we'd be happy to do that. I always think I should wear sunglasses because I'm looking for a hand up here.
Hi, my name is Sugata, and I represent the company Rack White Cement. I head their IT division. Since you're talking about leadership a lot, and you guys have done a lot of research, we keep hearing these two terms that the people say that this guy is a born leader. So what is your take on, and what are the difference between a born leader and a person who has learned leadership?
I love your question. Yeah. Because in the study that I did, I think the most significant point is that there was an article in Harvard Business Review this week that was talking about how leaders are just naturally born to collaborate, or they're not. And I saw it very differently in my study. I think the good news is that this is a skill that a leader can learn and that we can teach one another. But we have to focus on it, and we have to intentionally train it in our schools, in our workplaces, and with one another. It's a skill that we can learn. It's complex. It's very detail-oriented. We have to stop and think about our mindset and how we're going to steer the goals and the roles and the decision-making rights. All of that is extremely complex, but it's very learnable.
It's so profound, too, because when I'll show a picture of a Richard Branson, you might recognize him as he walks down the street. What we don't recognize is that genius, that entrepreneur, that leader in all of you. And it's that leadership capacity that lights you up. In other words, it's the cause and the goal that you're setting that has the charisma. Because I don't know about you, I don't feel like leader half the time. Right now I'm talking about my favorite subject, so you can hardly shut me up. You know, now you could see me right now. The only reason you can see us right now is because we're doing what we love. And that transcends our appearance, our gender, our orientation, our backgrounds. And that's what we found has made a lifetime of work for this, is to make the invisible visible. That's all of us. Every single one of you deserves a seat at the table where the decisions are made to help humanity embrace technology. Without you, we can't get there in a way that is worth curating. It'll be taken from us. We're here making a plea that you'll help us transcend and enable and use not AI as artificial intelligence, but as augmented intelligence that helps each of us be better practitioners of our craft in helping people get better at what they do.
Do we have any other questions in the room?
Thank you so much. I really have to say it's an honor to be with you. We're always so blessed and excited when we are able to parachute into a place that feels so much like all of the centers of innovation that we've been. The Middle East right now, you're leading the world. We need your leadership. We need your leadership. Thank you so much.
Mark Thompson, Dr. Benita Thompson, what an incredible presentation. What a way to open the 9th HR Tech Mina. Wow.